Welcome to this Football Manager 2020 experiment. Now, I've done this experiment every year, I think, since FM13, which just seems insane. I can't quite believe I've been making YouTube videos that long. But every year it's been popular. Once again, I've uploaded the database for this experiment. You can download it via the links in the description below. There's one for the Steam Workshop. There's one via media file. So you can decide what's best for you. And you can play to your heart's content. But as you can see, from what I've shown you on the screen, I have flipped all of the English leagues around. So we've got English Premier League teams and Championship teams playing in the Vanarama National League South and North. I've done it geographically. So the 10 most southern Premier League teams are in the National League South, and the 10 most northern Premier League teams are in the National League North. You might be surprised by Norwich being in there, but it's not. Norwich is actually further north than the likes of Aston Villa and Birmingham. It's quite surprising, actually. If you look at the latitude of Norwich, it's slightly further north than Birmingham, Aston Villa, etc. And likewise, all the other divisions have been flipped as well. Now, there was a bit of a spanner in the works this year because, of course, there's only 23 teams in League One in the first season because Bury, the unfortunate story of Bury. There's 23 teams. It will be rectified because there will be an extra team. No, there's only going to be 2 teams being relegated from League One in the first season. But as you can see, look at the Championship and the Premier League. It's all full of non-league teams. It's great to see. The favourites for the Premier League in the first season is Guiseley. 7-2 to win the league. They've got the highest reputation. It's always based on reputation. They've got the highest reputation in this particular division. So what I'm going to do in this experiment is we're going to holiday 3 seasons in this part 1. I am planning on continuing into the future if it's popular. I do this every year and people seem to enjoy it. But like I said, if you do want to play yourself with this database, you can download it via the links in the description below. So I've simulated the first season, and Blythe Spartans are the champions of England. Lee Clark's boys have won the Premier League in the first season. No money has really been spent at this point because although obviously all the TV money will come into these clubs, they didn't have much time to spend it before the start of the season. So we'll probably see some big signings next season or in the following years. It always takes a bit of time for it to filter through, I find. And of course, they've got low reputation, so it's hard to attract the big players at this point. But having qualified for the Champions League with Slough, Oxford City and Curzon Ashton, those 4 clubs should get a boost in reputation. They'll obviously get the European money as well as the Premier League money. Leamington and Spa qualified for the Europa League. The other 2 places will go to the FA Cup and League Cup winners. The real-life Premier League teams have probably won the FA Cup, and then the League Cup's probably been won by a team sort of in League 1 or 2. Chippenham, Hampton and Richmond and Bradford Park Avenue relegated, unfortunately. 3 teams had to go down. As you can see, it's quite equal. I mean, Blythe did run away with it, but the other teams in the European places didn't get a huge number of points, did they? Danny Elliott, top goal scorer for Slough. Look at these players playing in the Premier League. It's amazing. Love it. I really enjoy the early stages of this experiment. Over time, the real-life Premier League teams zoom up to the top flight and they end up winning the league generally. But it's a question of whether these teams can improve everything about their club. The real problem is they have to build a stadium because all these clubs don't have a big enough stadium. So they tend to have to share stadiums to start with. Blythe are currently playing at Burnley Stadium. It doesn't seem that they're actually not playing at their own stadiums. I thought that would be the case, but they are currently playing at their own stadium. But I think most teams will start to build bigger stadiums or expand their stadiums to meet the requirements of the Premier League, and obviously they have to spend a lot of money on that, so that might prevent them from spending money on players. So that is a little bit of a hindrance to start with. I could always do this experiment again and do it where all the teams have a big stadium to start with. That is a possibility. Anyway, the Championship won by Southport, Gateshead and Wealdstone also going up. So those 3 teams will probably be strong in the next season. I reckon they'll finish towards the top of the table because their reputation is slightly higher than the teams currently in the Premier League. Wealdstone beat Spennymoor in the playoff semi-final. Bath and Chelmsford also managed to get into the playoffs, with Brackley, Haventon Waterlooville and Welling getting relegated. So these teams will get plenty of money as well, playing in the Championship, of course. If you spot anything in this experiment that I don't shout out, because I don't see everything, then stick it in the comment section below. You might see an interesting top goal scorer. You might see someone signing a player from lower down the leagues. Anyway, League One, Barnet, Aldershot and Barrow have managed to get promoted. Stockport, Dover and Chorley relegated. By the way, all of the starting teams, it's, I flipped the divisions, but because of the 23 teams being in League One, I did have to sort of move a couple teams around, and it was all based on the reputation according to the Football Manager editor. So I think Notts County ended up in League 2 for that reason. There they are, almost getting relegated actually. Macclesfield deducted points for going into administration, so Notts County would have been relegated if it wasn't for Macclesfield going into administration. That's interesting. Swindon, Carlisle, Plymouth and Forest Green promoted to League 1 from League 2. And then this is where things, I suppose, start to get really interesting. We've got Football League teams in the National League here with Rotherham and Sunderland going up. So Rotherham won the league, but Sunderland promoted via the playoffs, with Rochdale, Wimbledon and Accrington relegated. Now the teams going down from these sorts of divisions, you will see them drop. They will drop like a stone into the non-league, and then unfortunately, because they're going to be encountering these really strong teams, they're going to get relegated out of the top 6 divisions in England entirely into the regional league. So Liverpool have managed to win the National League North, finishing ahead of Man City, but they did win the playoffs, beating the likes of, in fact there's a few rounds now, aren't they? So quite a few teams feature in the playoffs. So we might see a Championship team sneak up to the top flight before some of the Premier League teams. Huddersfield and Barnsley relegated into that very difficult regional level of football. You might not see them come back at all during the experiment. Mane was top goal scorer, by the way. Salah, highest average rating. He also got the most assists. De Bruyne with the most man of the match awards. So this is just like seeing a Premier League season really, but it's a mixture of Premier League clubs and Championship clubs, of course. I don't know if there's any Championship players featuring on here. There's the Wigan goalkeeper David Marshall featuring on a pit. Why has it all appearances here? This is all messed up. That's broken, isn't it? National League South won by Arsenal, so they finish ahead of Chelsea and Spurs. West Ham, my club, go up via the playoffs despite finishing 6th, so they had to get past Crystal Palace in the first round. They then defeated Spurs on penalties in the semi-final before winning the final on penalties against Bournemouth. So they have snuck up. That's really interesting. I don't think we've seen West Ham go up at the first attempt in previous experiments. It's usually Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea. It's predictable. Cardiff and Charlton are the two teams that unfortunately relegated. Charlton had a dreadful season, as you can see there. Interestingly, Mitrovic, top goal scorer for Fulham. Where did Fulham finish? 7th. That is really impressive. Callum Wilson 2nd with 21, and Josh King of Bournemouth obviously scored goals, didn't they, this season? Ericsson got the highest average rating. I think you could probably argue the National League North is slightly stronger because of Liverpool and Man City, the two best teams, being in it, but they've both gone up, so it will allow these other teams to progress, I suppose. So the FA Cup was won by Liverpool, so they do qualify for the Europa League this season. Of course, they did take part in the Champions League, so we'll have to see how they got in that competition. They thrashed Spurs 4-0 in the final. Mane, Alexander-Arnold and Salah with the goals. In the League Cup, Carabao Cup, so this is where things get interesting. There's no real-life Premier League teams featuring. So Plymouth Argyle have won the Carabao Cup in 2020 thanks to Byron Moore and Joel Grant. 2-0 win against Swindon. Excellent stuff. And then we've got the Community Shield won by Man City and the Leasing.com trophy. I don't know if that's the real name. It's the Johnston's Paint Trophy, isn't it? So Swindon, they didn't win the League Cup final, but they did win this final, beating Macclesfield in the final 2-0. We've then got the English FA Trophy won by Chelsea, beating West Ham, because this is obviously a non-league trophy. So Barkley managed to get the winning goal in that one. And then we're into the under-23 divisions. We'll just have a quick look at the European competitions. So Real Madrid won it. They beat Man City in the final. So Man City almost qualified for the Champions League next season by almost winning the final. They lost on penalties, really unlucky, because they would have been able to compete next year and it would have strengthened them even further. But they're going to miss out on European football next year. The Euro Cup was won by Roma, beating Sevilla in the final. We see any English teams progress. Now, the European competitions will get really interesting. Chelsea got to the quarter-final because we will actually see eventually some of these teams progressing in the Champions League. To start with, for the first few years, we'll see them get 0 points. That is always the way. That tends to be the way anyway. So I'll be surprised if any of them qualify from the group stage of the Champions League for a while. The other interesting thing to watch out for as the experiment progresses is this. We'll probably see the Premier League drop down in reputation. I think it's already dropped to 4 stars, in fact. But it will rise up again eventually as these teams get larger. And of course, we're probably going to see Man City, Liverpool, etc. get to the top flight fairly quickly. There's only 2 teams going up from the National League though, so that's a bit of a bottleneck for the teams going up from the Southern and Northern leagues. Anyway, let's simulate another season and see what happens. So after winning the Championship playoff final last year, Wealdstone have gone on and won the Premier League this season. 1 point ahead of Kettering, who finished 10 points ahead of Southport, and Hungerford also qualified for the Champions League. The champions, Blythe, or the last season's champions, have dropped down to 11th place. And Oxford City, Slough and Curzon-Ashton, who all qualified for the Champions League last year, have been relegated. What are the chances of that? That is bizarre. The top 4 teams have completely slumped. How have Slough gone from 2nd place, 66 points, to 8 and only winning 1 game? We'll have to investigate that. What on earth has happened? But yeah, Wealdstone, fantastic season. Southport also doing very well. Did they go up last year? Yeah. So Kettering, they were in... Where did they finish last year? They finished 8th, but they've moved up to 2nd. So it all depends on teams spending their money wisely. Did the European competitions get in the way? Did they get thrashed 10-0 by a team? And that might have ruined their morale. I don't know. Anyway, Alex Reid, top goal scorer for Southport. They signed him on a free. So this is the sort of signings that were made this year. If we just look at the transfers, I doubt there's anything... Oh, there's an expensive one. So Southport have spent some money. Ethan Pinnock coming in for £5.75 million from Brentford. Wealdstone signed this chap from Birmingham, an Angolan international, for £4.7 million. Gateshead spent a bit of money, so there's a few teams spending money here. That is good to see, but it's not huge amounts yet. It's obviously not Premier League amount of money, and it's not Premier League quality coming in. It's more sort of League 1, League 2 quality coming in at this stage. But things will change. I'm sure they will change. The reputation's still 4 stars, so that hasn't been ruined yet. But let's have a look at Wealdstone, the champions. Dean Brennan in charge, so very successful. Finished 3rd last year, qualified, got promoted via the playoffs, and then this year they've won the league. They spent £4.9 million. Bella was their top transfer, as you can see there. They sold a few players as well. This was the squad that won them the Premier League. So their wages, they're spending money on wages. Bella, 26k. Chris Gunter, so he was signed on a free from Reading. Chris Gunter on 26k. So they're spending money, that they need to spend money. If we just look at their finances using the in-game editor, you can see there's loads of money there. 104 million already. That is all that Premier League money. I mean, that is crazy amounts of money already. And this is their first season in the top flight. That really is quite incredible. Obviously, Kettering have done very well as well. Have they got similar amounts of money then? Yeah, they've got even more, haven't they? Wow, that is impressive. But what has happened to Blythe, for example? Let's have a look. So they spent 64k. I think, they've got Lewis Boa-Morte in charge, of all people. So they did sack their manager Lee Clark after a bad start to the season. Lewis Boa-Morte now in charge of Blythe. Now this video might be quite long because I just get bogged down in all this detail. I just love it. So yeah, Blythe really have not had a good time. They're not spending money on wages compared to the likes of Wealdstone. They have tons of money, like £218 million. Look at the wage budget and the transfer budget now. But sometimes they just grow too quickly, don't they? And then they have problems. Or they can't attract players. But they played in the Champions League. How did they get on in the Champions League? So they lost against Benfica. This was their group. They finished bottom, minus 22 goal difference. So that would have had an impact on the morale, I suppose. They lost the Community Shield 6-0 against Liverpool, by the way. That's unfortunate. But I'm really interested to see what's happened to the likes of Slough. How have things gone so badly for them? I mean, they've got tons of money as well. All that TV money coming in. But their wage budget they've just not spent any money on wages. They spent £2,500. Why didn't they spend money? Why have they not spent it? Did they have a manager that just doesn't want to spend the money? They've brought a new manager in. In fact, they've had a couple managers now, haven't they, looking at that? Kevin Bond came in, and then most recently Alex Meechan has come in. But he's not great. He's pretty awful, really. So I don't know. There's all this money that they're not spending. They've gone down, but they might be able to get back because of all that money. You know, they're a rich club now. We've really created some mega rich clubs. I'm just intrigued to see if anyone's building stadiums. They wouldn't have built one. Oh, they have. That is quick. Oh, no, sorry. Eastbourne Borough are playing at Brighton. They haven't built. They're just playing. There's 2 teams playing at Selhurst Park. So, yeah, everyone is playing. Apart from these few teams, I don't know how they're allowed to play in these small stadiums, because I thought they had to play in 12,500 seater stadiums. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, how many... I'm interested in everything today. Blythe Spartans, so playing at Burnley, what sort of crowds are they getting in the Premier League? 1,629. Oh, it's not good. But eventually it will work. They'll be able to build up a fan base if they stay in the top flight for long enough. Wealdstone attracted 3,612. They're playing at Vicarage Road. So yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good for Wealdstone. They've got better reputation than some of the teams in this league anyway. So yeah, Oxford City also had problems. Joey Barton is in charge of the club now. Curzon Ashton, John Askey in charge. So those 3 teams who qualified for the Champions League have been relegated. Let's just have a quick look. Sorry, 3 teams, not 4 teams. So Barcelona champions of Europe. We'll just have a quick look at all the groups though to see how. So Oxford City bottom with a -26 goal difference. Blythe with a -22. Curzon Ashton with a -23. And Slough with a -35. What's 9-0 defeat against Valencia. 10-0 defeat against Roma. That has killed them, hasn't it? Look at all those defeats. It is awful. When was their first win of the season? It wasn't until this game against Curzon. So that was their only win of the season, of course. That is literally their only competitive win of the season, because they didn't even do well in the cups either. That is dreadful. Poor old Slough. Anyway, let's go down to the Championship, which was won by Aldershot. They've won 2 titles in a row, and they've got up to the Premier League. Wouldn't be surprised if they go on and win the Premier League next season. Wow, considering the problems that they've had in recent years, that's great for them, isn't it? Up to the top flight, they probably will win it next year. They're completely romped to victory, only losing 1 game this season, which was against Barnet, who finished second. Chester go up via the playoffs. Bradford Park Avenue relegated for a 2nd season in a row. Chippenham also relegated for a 2nd season in a row. And Alfreton relegated for the first time. So who survived? I can't remember. Oh, Hampton and Richmond, they went down last year, so they've survived in the Championship. But yeah, these teams are probably going to drop all the way to the bottom now. Although, do they have money from that one Premier League season? Yes, they do. They've got money. Spend it, for goodness sake. Spend your money. Even if you can't attract really good players, just spend it on the best players in this division. Attract them. You've got money. But yeah, that's a real shame for those 2 teams that have gone down twice in a row. Aldershot, will they have as much money? Surely not, because they've not been in the Premier League. No. So you can see the difference between Premier League and Championship money. However, they've got a massive transfer budget, which is more than the bank balance, probably because they know they're going up to the top flight. All the competition money coming in as well, I suppose. Anyway, let's go down and have a look at the other divisions. So Forest Green have won League One. Chesterfield and Plymouth also go up. Plymouth did really well, but had to settle for the playoffs, and they did manage to get promoted. Havant, Waterlooville, Boreham Wood, Brackley and Welling going down. So I think that's 2 relegations in a row for Havant and Waterlooville and Brackley and Welling. And of course, I forgot to say last season only 2 teams or 3 teams went down from League One. Yeah, 3 teams went down from League One, and this season 4 have gone down from League One, as we're now back up to 24 teams in this division. So, top goal scorer, Aaron Collins for Forest Green. Signed him on a free couple seasons ago, and they've easily won League One. So they're up to the Championship. So these teams will probably go up to the top flight and become big teams in England. I'll imagine they will in a couple seasons' time. League 2 then won by Rotherham, going up for the 2nd season in a row. So have Sunderland. They've gone up for the 2nd season in a row. Big gap between those 2 and the next team, Newport County, who finished 3rd and got promoted. Exeter City managed to win the playoffs with Dover and Chorley getting relegated for probably a 2nd season in a row. Yeah, they have. Who was the other team to go down last year? It was Stockport. So how did Stockport get on this season? They survived. That's good. Good to see. I don't like it when teams just drop all the way down, but we are going to see it, unfortunately. So no surprises. Liverpool have managed to win the National League, losing 0 games. So they're coming up against even weaker opposition this season, of course. Last year it was Championship and Premier League teams. This time around it's League One teams mainly. So much easier for them. Man City only lost 1 game, which was against Liverpool. But they didn't win the playoffs. They lost against Arsenal 3-1. Let's have a look at the team. So Lacazette and Guendouzi scoring. Lookman for Man City. So they signed him for 46. I mean, they're still spending money even in these leagues. Look at the teams. They're still really strong. However, I imagine there's probably some transfer movement going out. Can't see any transfers for some reason. That's a bit weird. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, look at the players Man City sold. Sane and De Bruyne. De Bruyne has gone to Real Madrid. Sane's gone to Milan. So they didn't want to stick around in the lower leagues. However, Man City have invested that money. They signed Trent Alexander-Arnold from Liverpool. And the fees will be lower. In real life, these players would command a bigger value, especially De Bruyne. But, of course, they're in the lower league. So they're being sold for less than their value. Likewise, the value of some of these other players may be slightly been accentuated by the fact maybe, Chelsea have signed a player from Arsenal for 46.5 million. Tierney. It's just, they're going between, I think he's dropped down a division to Chelsea. That's just quite strange, these transfers. Fascinating, but strange. Look at all the players that they have signed, but there's a lot of players leaving these divisions as well, but not everyone. A lot of them are sticking around. Sebastian Haller, top goal scorer this season for West Ham. He missed out. Quite a few points behind Arsenal. Salah, highest average rating. Anderson with 24 assists, destroying the league. Shrewsbury, Macclesfield, Gillingham and Southend United relegated then down to these divisions. Man United, champions of the National League North. I suppose no surprise really looking at the competition. But Leicester City have not done that well. They've failed again to get promoted. Wolves have gone up via the playoffs, but you'd imagine Leicester will surely go up next year. Everton have had problems. They've gone into administration. They lost 10 points as a result. Marco Silva still in charge with Seamus Coleman, the captain. They didn't sign anyone probably because of the administration problems. They've sold quite a few players, as you can see. The Tom Davies for 3.4 million, didn't you, for 10.5, like nothing. But I suppose they've been forced to do it. They do have money, but it's only £2.8 million. They're in real trouble. Real trouble. One of the interesting things is when some teams get stuck in these divisions, sort of 15, 20 years down the line, they actually build smaller stadiums. They have to because their fan base has deserted them for being in these lower leagues. Well, look, you'll notice the reputation will eventually decline. The teams going down pretty much automatically go down to 1-star local reputation. So Rochdale, Nuneaton Borough, Gainsborough and Witton relegated. These 3 teams came up from the division below. It's probably why they've done nothing, basically. Paul Pogba, top goal scorer. 36 goals from Paul Pogba. That is very impressive. And then the National League South. Chelsea champions. No surprise there with Spurs only 1 point behind them, but going up via the playoffs in the end. Danny Ings, top goal scorer for Southampton. Dele Alli, second. He's still playing for them. Loftus-Cheek on there. Ward-Prowse. The 4 teams going down. Met Police, Merthyr, Salisbury and Carshalton. So there's a few teams. I mean, Stourbridge had an awful season. Minus 105 goal difference, but they still survive with 16 points. That's pretty funny. Brighton have qualified for Europe, so they must have won a cup competition looking at that. Looking at the transfers. So yeah, Harry Kane has moved to PSG for £92 million. Morata's gone to Atletico Madrid. Dele Alli did actually move. So he moved from Spurs to Chelsea. And Chelsea finished 1 point ahead of Spurs in the end. This is fascinating. I love it. I just love... Look at all the money involved in this division. I don't know if that will have an impact on the reputation. It's actually gone down, which doesn't make any sense considering the teams playing here. 4-star. I think Chelsea have dropped half a star. Spurs are still 4.5 stars. Still got Pochettino in charge, by the way. FA Cup was won by Brighton. They beat Crystal Palace Brighton FA Cup final. Tasty. Gross and Andone scored. Schlupp also scored. So Brighton qualify for the Europa League next season, and the Carabao Cup won by Rotherham, so they qualify for the Europa League next season as well. Of course, Plymouth qualified last year. How did they get on in the Europa League? They lost in the second qualifying round, unfortunately, against Rapid Vienna. But Rotherham will have a go next year, which is... I love it. I love the fact that these teams are qualifying. We obviously know the result of the Community Shield, then the Leasing.com Trophy Final. Forest Green beat Oldham on penalties. And the FA Trophy won by Arsenal, beating West Brom 3-0 in the final. And that's it. So let's move on and have a look at our third and final season in this particular video. So my prediction has come true. Aldershot have managed to win the third Premier League season. It's great to see 3 different winners. But maybe Aldershot have a chance of winning it again next year. Although the team coming up from the Championship, it's probably going to be a strong team, so they might go on and win it. Gateshead, Southport and Kings Lynn qualify for the Champions League. So Southport, second season in a row for them. I think I'm correct in saying that. Oh, this chap has moved to Aldershot for £4.7 million from Brighton, and he was top goal scorer this year. So a bit of money spent there. Oh, Kamara from Fulham for £1.4 million, moved to Southport. Had a fine season as well. Eastbourne, Borough, Tonbridge and Blyth, champions of the first season, have gone down. They have... I find this really weird. All 4 teams that finished in the Champions League places in that first season have been relegated. They've got tons of... Look at all that money they have. It is ridiculous. But they only spent 400k. And it just wasn't enough to keep them up. I presume they've changed managers again. Yeah, Boa Morte sacked. Mark Carrington in charge now. But yeah, it just wasn't a good enough... I mean, they're spending money on wages, as you can see. But maybe they're paying over the odds for certain players. Will Aimson on 37 grand. But I suppose it's that Premier League money. These players can command big wages. I mean, this chap, look at him. Who's he played for previously? Salisbury City, Yeovil, Notts County. So at the start, he was playing for Salisbury City in the Southern Premier South. He's now playing in the Premier League, earning £36,000 a week. I mean, what is that all about? Then we've got a fake Jake Young, playing for Blythe for £3,500, moving from Sheffield United. And he's on... this is just... They're paying over the odds for rubbish players. There's just no intelligence from the club or the managers. Maybe that's the problem with these teams. They've still got that non-league philosophy. They should be thinking like a big club now. They were in the Champions League, for goodness sake. And that's really disappointing that they flopped like that. Let's have a look at the transfers. Actually, manager movements first. These are the manager movements. So lots of sackings. Are there any big names? Steve Bruce is in charge of Weymouth. Amazing. Gary Monk is in charge of Hungerford. Tony Pulis is in charge of Concord Rangers. I love that. Chris Coleman in charge of Eastbourne Borough. So they're getting in big names now. Chris Houghton as well, going to Kettering. I like that. I like that they've been a bit more ambitious. These are the transfers involved. So Hemel Hempstead signed Fornals from West Ham for £15.5 million, and he's being paid 80k by Hemel Hempstead, who finished 16th in the Premier League and had Paul Lambert in charge. That's amazing. I just love this point. Like 3 or 4 seasons in, you just get such random stuff going on. Jay Da Silva going from Bristol City to Gateshead for £15.25 million. That's a lot of money. Chowdhury going from Leicester to Gateshead as well. So Gateshead have spent money, haven't they? They finished second, so obviously worked for them. Che Adams going from Southampton to Dorking. So look at all the money they've spent. That's amazing. Have any new stadiums been built or expanded? They're still playing at the same stadiums by the looks of it. And everyone is playing at... Gateshead. Gateshead have... They've built a new stadium. They've really spent money, haven't they? They finished second and they've built a new stadium. This is a new one for Weymouth. 12.5 seats. So that's the minimum, basically. Leamington Spa have gone for a slightly bigger one than those two teams. 12,663 people, built in 2021 as well. Canvey Island, Concord have built a stadium on Canvey Island, which is where they're based. So that's a slightly bigger one as well. And Hungerford have also built one. That's actually the biggest new one, I think, looking at it. Yeah, all the other teams are waiting to build new stadiums. I assume that's the case anyway. Let's just have a look at their facilities. Blythe building that new stadium or expanding their current one or the other. But of course, they're going to be playing in the Championship. There's 4 teams playing at Selhurst Park. How is that even possible? The fixture congestion, considering Crystal Palace will be playing there as well, that is just insane. How is that possible? Aldershot, Barnet, Dorking and Tonbridge all playing at Selhurst Park. Why don't they share like one of the other London stadiums? That's just really random. Anyway, let's go down to the Championship and have a look. Plymouth Argyle have gone up again, along with Chesterfield and Forest Green. So those 3 will surely be the favourites to top the Premier League next year. We might see Forest Green turn into the biggest team in England. Dartford, Altrincham and Curzon Ashton have been relegated again after finishing the Champions League places. And I assume they've still got loads of money. They do. They're not spending it. They're building a new stadium. I don't think they are. They're just staying at their stadium. But poor old Curzon Ashton, Altrincham have gone down, and Dartford have also gone down after a couple steady years in the Championship. But the other teams have survived. Chelmsford have been pretty unlucky. They've got to the playoffs, I think, maybe every single season. Slough finished mid-table, and so did Oxford City. So they've stabilised themselves a little bit. Top goal scorer this season, Tyler Walker for Plymouth, who they signed on a free. He's earning £5.25 million. In fact, let's look at the Plymouth team. Gary Megson is in charge, by the way. So they're spending reasonable amounts. Haksabanovic has come in and signed for Plymouth for £1.1 million from West Ham. But that's not huge amount of money really in the Championship nowadays, but it's been enough to get them promoted very comfortably to the top flight. Let's just have a quick look at the manager movements here. So Darius Vassell is in charge of Hampton and Richmond. Quinton Fortune, so blast from the past here. Nigel Clough is in charge of Maidstone. Love it. Transfers, so not so much money. The biggest transfer was Haksabanovic. In fact, Plymouth had the two biggest transfers. So the difference between the Premier League and the Championship is huge, isn't it, when you think about it, the money-wise anyway. Let's go down to League One, which was won by Sunderland. Sunderland go up for the third season in a row, up into the Championship. Corley Woodrow, top goal scorer for them. They signed him for £1.6 million from Barnsley. Yeovil have also managed to go up to the Championship, and Rotherham have gone up again via the playoffs this time. They had the best performing player this season, Scottish international, who's actually a Rotherham player anyway. Chippenham, Eastleigh, Bradford, Park Avenue and Alfreton go down. Chippenham have been relegated 3 seasons in a row. Eastleigh have gone down for the first time. Bradford Park Avenue relegated for the 3rd season in a row as well. And Alfreton relegated for the 2nd season in a row. So it's not great. They get relegated once and it's just a never-ending cycle, it seems, for these teams. They get into a habit of losing. Of course, they come up against very difficult opposition. I imagine there's Ryan Creswell is in charge of Eastleigh, David Witter in charge of Sutton, Gary Johnson in charge of Carlisle. Transfer wise, we've had a bigger transfer. Oh no, that's because that's a player moving to Gateshead, sorry. Yeah, it's players leaving this division and moving on. But Sunderland, that is a bigger transfer than the Championship, isn't it? Let's go down to League 2 then. There should be no surprises here. Arsenal. The surprise is Arsenal finish above Liverpool, I think. 6 points clear of Liverpool. They both lost one game this season against each other, I presume. Aubameyang, 43 goals. He's still playing for Arsenal. Salah still playing for Liverpool with the best average rating. Crewe and Walsall also managed to get promoted, with Bournemouth and Welling getting relegated. 2nd season in a row for Bournemouth and 3rd season in a row for Welling United. They started in the Championship and they're already in non-league again. Poor old Welling. Manager movements. Don't know if there's anything interesting there. Like I said, stick it in the comment section below if you see anything. These are the transfers. So Saka moved from Arsenal to Man United, moved down a division. We've seen Origi move to Milan. Haller's moved to Liverpool from West Ham. Jacques has moved from Arsenal to Man City. Moved down to Declan Rice has moved to Liverpool as well. What's happening with the England team? That's interesting. I mean, it probably won't have a massive impact on the England team, but we might eventually look at the top players. Sanchez at Barcelona, Sterling at PSG, Kane at PSG, Tomori's at Borussia Dortmund. This is the current squad. Southgate's still in charge, by the way. But we will eventually. I want to put clubs in here. Yeah, if we put the club in there, you will eventually see some more interesting teams featuring. Eventually, we'll see the traditional non-league teams are now in the top flight, featuring players in the England team. But that'll probably be a couple of years down the line. Right, let's go down then to the National League, which was won by Man United. Man City go up, so Chelsea and West Ham still stuck, along with Wolves and Spurs. Like I said, it's a bottleneck, because 4 teams go up from the 2 combined divisions below, and then only 2 can go up from this division. So we might, although West Ham got promoted in that first season, they now might be stuck in the National League for a few years. Dele Alli, top goal scorer, 39 goals for Chelsea. But they failed to get promoted, of course. Rashford, top average rating. Martial with 34 goals. Adama Traore, most assists. Peterborough, Bradford City, Chorley and Dover relegated. Dover minus 109 goal difference and relegated for the third season in a row. Bit unfortunate for them. But look, the top 6 teams, all real-life Premier League teams, look how much of a gap there is between them and Lincoln. Spurs have dropped a half star on their reputation. Wolves, I don't know what they were on at the start. Man United still 4.5. Man City down to 4. And Chelsea down to 4 as well. So there's definitely been an impact on the reputation, and it will have an even bigger impact the longer they get stuck in non-league, that is for sure. Let's look at the manager movements then. So that's what's been happening. And then the transfers. Bernardo Silva moved to Barcelona. Man City have sold a lot of their big players, haven't they? And they don't have Pep in charge anymore. He resigned, and he's now in charge of AC Milan. But they've got Tuchel in charge for the last year. They've spent £146 million, but sold £205 million worth of players. Lots of players coming from Arsenal, interestingly. And that is the current Man City squad. So they've been promoted. Man United have Solskjaer in charge still. And this is their squad. So lots of familiar names still. They did sell £56 million worth. But they signed £86 million worth of players. Are they getting the same attendances? Yeah. Not quite selling out, I don't think. Is it 75,000? But it's still reasonably big. I'm surprised the Wolves one was lower than Bradford City. Not Bradford City, Tranmere. Seems a bit weird. Last day of the season. Or last home game of the season against Ipswich, 73,000. So it's not bad. Man City, this is where people joke about them having an empty stadium, I suppose. But let's just see what they're managing to get in. So 50... Oh, no, they are. They're fine at the moment. So they're not quite filling every single game, but they pretty much are most of the time. Over 50,000. But over time, those attendances will decline if they get stuck in these divisions. So the National League North then, won by West Brom this time. So the first Championship team to get out of the National League North, along with Newcastle, went up via the playoffs, beating Blackburn Rovers on penalties. So Leicester's still stuck here. Everton have really dropped. They're in trouble, aren't they, financially? Okay finances. Pellegrino in charge. So maybe things have improved a little bit for them, but they did not have a good season at all. Aston Villa all the way down in 12th. That's the lowest ranked. No, Norwich. Norwich all the way down in 18th. Accrington, Macclesfield, Scarborough Athletic and Lowestoft relegated. Hyder Costa, top goal scorer for Leeds, who managed to get into the playoffs. Manager movements. There you go. Jaap Stam in charge of Stoke City. Transfer-wise, so obviously players leaving this division. So still loads of money flying in and out of this particular division. National League South then, won by Bournemouth, with Southampton going up via the playoffs. But Reading went into administration. Not great for them. Where did they finish? 12th. They would have finished one place higher if they'd had 10 more points. So Bournemouth and Southampton, the two southern teams getting out of this division. Brighton and Watford still stuck here, as a Palace. Lowest ranked Premier League team, I think, was in fact Palace by the looks of it. Mitrovic, top goal scorer again. He's banging them in at this level. No surprise there, really. Manager movements. There you go. And, it's David Martin. He's obviously had a very good weekend in real life. He's moved to Farnborough. And transfers, loads of money flying in and out again. Gateshead spending so much money to finish second. How much did they spend in the end? 45.5. But that's what they need to spend if they want to compete. And hopefully they can compete with the teams coming up from the Championship this season, who will obviously have a higher reputation and might be able to attract better players. But they've prepared for that, I suppose. So let's go down. Let's look up the cup competitions. FA Cup won by Liverpool for the second time in this experiment. 5-1 win against Southampton in the final. I imagine they're going to fly up to the top and regain control of England. They've also won the Carabao Cup, beating Kettering in the final. What is going on here? Kettering, what are you doing? 3 red cards. How many? That is a bloodbath. Liverpool didn't even get any yellow cards. They've just really tried to play hard against Liverpool, haven't they? And it didn't work for them. Chris Hughton in charge, by the way. They finished 9th in the Premier League. But that's obscene from Kettering. What are you doing? Community Shield won by Wealdstone. They beat Brighton. I love that. Can't see it, but that's really good news for Wealdstone. And the Leasing.com Trophy won by Liverpool, beating Arsenal in the final. FA Trophy won by Man City, beating Blackburn in the final. and then we're down to the under 23s. I think that's it now. I'm just going to have a quick look at the Ballon d'Or. Oh, Aguero's at Man City, by the way, and he's managed to win that, so that's pretty good going. Ronaldo still winning it at the age of 37. That is just ridiculous. Messi finishing third. The rankings of the Premier League still 4 stars, so it's not gone down a huge amount so far, which is good. Cup competitions there for you. Clubs. So, Liverpool still up there despite being in League 2. We will eventually see the smaller teams get in there if we just look at this. So at the moment, it's the traditional Premier League and Championship teams still at the top. But we will see... Oh, there we go. Aldershot, 2 stars. They're the best ranked non-league team in real life. But they're the only Premier League team up there, as you can see. Plymouth up there as well from the Championship. So they'll be the highest ranked team in the Premier League next year, I guess, and likely to go on and win it. I'm planning on doing a few parts to this and holidaying into the future. If you want me to do that, then hit the like button. Be much appreciated. And like I said, if you do want to download the database, it's in the description below. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well. That'd be very much appreciated. But until next time, enjoy FM20. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you very soon.